Tonight we have a special guest. His name is Devon Francke. He is the education program coordinator for Keep Pinellas Beautiful. His presentation is 5 things you didn't know about microplastics. Devon Francke has earned a master's degree in marine science at Hawaii Pacific University. As I said, he is the education program coordinator with Keep Pinellas Beautiful. He's leading the design and implementation of a microplastics education and outreach program. He's creating K-12 marine debris and microplastic curriculums as well, and leads beach cleanups focused on the removal of plastics from our waterways. Devon, welcome, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead and share my screen, get the presentation started here. All right. Make sure that I've turned on. Yep, my sound should be good. All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Devon Francke, and I am the Education Program Coordinator with Keep Pinellas Beautiful. And I am here today to speak with you all about one of the major environmental conservation issues we are facing, both on a global but also a local level, which is microplastics. It's possible and likely that many of you have heard this term before and might have some knowledge on this issue already, but I'm hoping I can still teach you all more on the topic today and tell you what our organization, Keep Pinellas Beautiful, is doing to educate the public and spread awareness of this very important problem and what we can do to help make a difference. So first, just in case you haven't heard of Keep Pinellas Beautiful before, I'd like to give you just a quick, brief overview of who we are. So Keep Pinellas Beautiful was established in Pinellas County in 1992 and is an active, integral piece of the Pinellas County community. The mission of Keep Pinellas Beautiful is to conserve and beautify our natural environment by means of community engagement, education, and empowerment. And we accomplish this mission through our 4 focal areas, which are litter prevention, waste reduction, conservation, and beautification and community greening. Our affiliate works with businesses, schools, neighborhood groups, and local governments to tackle tough issues such as illegal dumping, roadway litter, water pollution, neglected vacant lots, graffiti, urban runoff into our local waterways, and lack of green spaces. So through our education, engagement, and empowerment efforts, our vision is to create a culture of environmentally responsible citizens within our communities throughout Pinellas County. We truly believe that through hands-on participation, we can empower and motivate our neighbors to take action and develop a sense of ownership and pride for our small piece of paradise. KPB's goal is to have Pinellas County residents understand the effects of human impact on the environment and develop ways to take action in their own communities. So we work diligently to educate and engage our community to take action through a variety of programming. Our education initiatives empower our residents and students to become active environmental stewards. Student involvement encourages Pinellas County youth to get involved with the environment through experiential engagement opportunities. Our Adopt a Mile program, or our adoption program, is a partnership between KPB, Pinellas County, and residents. It's a free program involving participants who adopt an area of Pinellas County, such as a part of a roadway, a trail, a neighborhood, a park, or a shoreline, and they receive the training and materials that are necessary to host their own cleanups. Our brand new ambassador program helps regular community members emerge as volunteer leaders in the areas of beach cleanups, gardening, education, and microplastics research. These ambassadors represent KPB out in the community and help us to reach more people than we otherwise could. Community improvement projects engage residents to create positive change and a lasting impact. We work with community leaders and interested parties like churches, schools, businesses to organize projects throughout Pinellas County, including cleanups and beautification efforts like plantings and invasive species removals. Annual cleanups bring together communities across the country and the world. Since 1998, Keep America Beautiful has been hosting the Great American Cleanup, which is a nationwide volunteer-based community improvement program that engages more than 3.4 million people each year. Keep Pinellas Beautiful organizes dozens of cleanups at parks, public areas, and waterways as part of this event. And every autumn, we partner with the Ocean Conservancy to coordinate the international coastal cleanup at sites throughout Pinellas County. And we've now created an individual cleanup program called Pick Up Pinellas. And that allows you to choose the location, the date, and time of your own cleanup with a small group of helpers of your choosing, which is a very safe option during the current pandemic. And our litter hotline was redesigned to have direct input from our county residents to report trash and illegal dumping. Residents can report litter and illegal dumpings to us, and then we will respond to the calls, picking up and properly disposing of those items. So now that we know a little bit more about who we are, Keep Pinellas Beautiful, let's dive into one of the most important environmental conservation issues we are currently combating, which is microplastics. But before we can dive straight into microplastics, we need to understand the bigger picture first. What do you all think is one of the biggest issues that is affecting the health of our environment right here in Pinellas County, along with the rest of the world? Well, here's a hint. That's right, it's trash. Here in Tampa Bay, we are throwing out about 2.6 million pounds of trash every day. That much trash would fill 86 garbage trucks and is equivalent to the weight of about 200 African elephants. While much of that will end up in landfills, not all of it is getting disposed of properly. So what happens to all that trash that's littered here in Pinellas County? Does it just go away? Well, the answer is no. It gets washed away by wind and rain straight into our local waterways, all of which connect to the ocean. This litter then becomes marine debris. So what is marine debris? NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, defines it as any persistent solid material that is manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, disposed of or abandoned into the marine environment or Great Lakes. Marine debris can be made up of pretty much anything: plastic, metal, wood, etc., like soda bottles, plastic bags, derelict fishing gear, abandoned vessels, you name it. If people make it and it ends up in the ocean, it's marine debris. Of all the different kinds of marine debris, plastic is now the most common kind. Between half and up to 95% of all marine debris is made out of plastic. This is incredibly impressive, as plastic has only been around for 60 to 70 years. But this makes sense as the amount of plastic being produced has been increasing exponentially. But so what? Who cares, right? It's in the ocean, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, it doesn't affect us. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. So let's take a look at how all of this plastic in the ocean came to be.
I just want to say one word to you. Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Plastics.
Exactly. How do you mean?
There's a great future in plastics. Think about it. Will you think about it?
Yes, I will.
Enough said. That's a deal.
So when plastics first began being manufactured on a big scale, it truly was a huge step into the future. Household containers and other items could now be cheaply produced that would help preserve food and make other daily tasks much simpler. By 1950, already 2 million metric tons of plastic had been manufactured as plastics began to be made on a big scale. It didn't take long, though, to start seeing the effects of plastics in the environment. Just 10 years later, in 1960, the first seabird was recorded having ingested marine debris, foreshadowing what was soon to come. In 1972, the first paper was published reporting small floating plastics in the open ocean. We're going to talk about this phenomenon just a little bit later on. In 1987, scientists began to do larger, full-scale studies on concentrations of plastic in the ocean. One methodology they used was to drag plankton net tows, like this one in the picture, behind their boats, collecting and counting all the plastic that was collected in the net. This continues to be a popular method of quantifying plastic concentrations in the ocean. Jumping forward to 2003, this is when the term garbage patch was born. You may have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where the ocean gyres and currents push all of the debris into a large patch. As of 2010, there's now 100 million metric tons of plastic waste in the ocean, and that's just within 50 kilometers of the coastlines. Wow is right, that's a lot. If you were to count 1 pound of that trash every second, it would take 19,216 years to count all of that marine debris. Another way to envision this much plastic marine debris is that it would be equivalent in weight to 302 Empire State Buildings. Stacking these end to end would reach all the way from Tampa to Orlando. A study done in 2010, combining all known plankton tow data to estimate the amount of plastic in the ocean was done. Each dot here shows a location of a plankton tow between 1986 and 2010. The color indicates the concentration of plastic in pieces per square kilometer. But as you can see, most of the world still hasn't been sampled yet. Now, let's move up to 2015. In North America, the average person is using 306.4 pounds of plastic per year. That's equal in weight to the heaviest players in the NFL. And just here in the United States, we're using 50 million single-use plastic bottles every day. If you were to stretch that many plastic bottles end to end, it would reach from Los Angeles to Beijing. And that brings us to today. How much plastic is in the ocean today? Well, honestly, we don't know. But what we do know is that more and more plastic is being generated every year. Most of the ocean still hasn't been sampled, and that plastic is found in every ocean. From those plankton tow studies, it was estimated there's about 364,800 pieces of plastic per square mile. But based on the estimates of the amounts of plastic we've made and the amount that enters the ocean each year, we know that that number is drastically lower than the real amount. So the question is, where is all of this plastic that we're not sampling that we know is out there? Well, it could be in places other than the sea surface, such as lower in the water column, could be in the deep sea, in the sediments at the bottom of the ocean, could be far offshore, or they're just too small to even be counted, or they may even be inside animals. In actuality, the most recent best estimates based on plastic production and usage suggest that over 300 million metric tons of plastic is in the ocean, which is equivalent to the weight of 6,321 Titanics. We also know that 8 million metric tons of plastic debris enters the ocean each year. If this weight was converted just into plastic grocery bags, it would be equivalent to the weight of 1.5 trillion plastic grocery bags. That's enough for almost 200 bags per person on Earth. Stacked end to end, these bags would reach from the Earth to the sun 65 times. So how does all of this plastic actually get into the ocean in the first place? Do you think it all just falls off of boats? Well, it actually doesn't. About 80% of all marine debris starts in inland communities and gets blown out to sea. The debris will enter the ocean if it's not collected by street sweepers, not collected by stormwater catchments, or not picked up in litter removal or cleanups. It can then enter the ocean by being blown, washed in by storms or tides.
The exact problem of plastic in ocean is this. Now you come to the plastic graveyard here in the ocean.
The washed-up remains of a throwaway society.
Now you see the enormity of the problem.
This isn't litter that's been dropped on the beach. It's come in from the sea, recklessly thrown away, distributed on the currents, and then swept ashore.
This is the most dangerous, the blue one. It's a single-use plastic. And this, if it gets down, you had it. This is all in the mall. This is from the mall.
From the shopping mall.
Shopping mall. This is so prevalent in Indian shopping mall.
Afros inspired the world's biggest ever beach clean. Once a week, volunteers clear what they can, knowing full well that the next tide will lay a new carpet of plastic.
So the ocean throws it up. Ocean pukes out every 2 months, 3 months, And if you don't clean it, it will get piled on, piled on, piled on. It's just not convenient for the fishes and the marine creatures and marine birds, It's their house. It's there where they belong, they live, they survive. They're crying for justice because we have messed up to their houses.
Worldwide, the equivalent of one rubbish truck of plastic waste is being dumped into the ocean every minute. By 2050, the trash in the sea is likely to weigh more than all of the fish. This is the debris of modern life, almost all of it single-use plastic. A bag used for a few minutes to take the shopping home, a straw used for seconds to drink some juice, and thrown away with little regard for what happened to it, and now being brought back in on the tide.
So this is clearly a very complex problem, requiring a very complex solution. So adding to this complexity is the problem that plastic in the ocean can remain intact for a very long time. In fact, this man-made material will never biodegrade like natural or organic materials would. Instead, the longer this plastic remains in the ocean, the more likely it is just to break into smaller pieces, but never to actually disappear into the environment. So let's play a very quick game here. On the screen, we have some common plastic items that can end up as marine debris. For each object, I've hidden the amount of time it takes for that item to break apart into smaller pieces. Let's reveal some of these and see if you can guess the amount of time it takes for those items to disappear. So our first group with all the number ones are the cigarette butt, shopping bag, plastic beverage holder, and styrofoam cup. How long until these items are broken apart so much that you can't see them anymore? Well, these items range between about 1 to 50 years. Some of these items are used for only a few minutes to end up wasting away into the environment for decades. All right, up next, number 2. We got 2 items, a plastic water bottle and a disposable diaper. What do you guys think? 450 years. Just think, if George Washington littered a water bottle in the ocean right after ratifying the Constitution, it would be considered gone in the year 2226. That's still another 205 years from now. And lastly, fishing line. All right, what do you think? How long until it's gone? 600 years. Do you think that's enough time for a sea turtle to get tangled in it? Yeah, probably is. So over time, in many cases, a lot of time, this plastic breaks down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. And surprisingly, these tiny pieces can be just as harmful, if not more harmful, than the big original pieces of plastic. And what are these tiny pieces of plastic called? Microplastics. So what are microplastics exactly? Well, as you might have guessed, micro means small and plastics means, well, plastics. So officially, microplastics are defined as pieces of plastic that are 5 millimeters in size or smaller, whereas macroplastics are then larger than 5 millimeters. Microplastics have only started to be studied really within the last 15 years or so. So it's really a very new science. And Keep Pinellas Beautiful is actually on the forefront of studying this phenomenon and educating the public right here in Tampa Bay. So more on this just a little bit later. There are a variety of types of microplastics. So primary microplastics are comprised of things like nurdles and microbeads, which are made in plastic producing factories. These small plastics are either used directly in products like microbeads in facial cleansers and toothpaste, or are melted down to make larger kinds of plastic like bags, bottles, shoes, things like that. Secondary microplastics are bits of plastic that have broken down from larger pieces of plastic through the photodegradation process out in the environment. Typically, these items are made of plastics like polyester, nylon, acrylic, or polypropylene, also known as styrofoam. Basically, the degradation process works like this. If you have sunshine, add in some wind and waves, that makes the perfect recipe for secondary microplastics to form over time. As this is a new science, this degradation process is still poorly understood. How long does it take for this to happen? How quickly are the pieces transported? Do other factors like temperature have an effect? Scientists still don't have concrete answers to these questions. But what is known is that the risk to animals and the environment increase with time as the plastics get smaller, and that these microplastics come from and are found everywhere, even from unlikely sources.
Every day, the world throws away billions and billions of plastic bottles. That's a problem. Of course, the real solution is that we all use less plastic. But it's cool that even while we work to reduce plastic, some companies are turning trash into stuff we actually like. Drink it, drop it in the bin, take it to a recycling factory, chop it up, weave it, wear it, wash it, wear it again, wash it again. Seems like a great solution, right? But darn, when we look closer, there are some real problems with this. The big problem is that some people might be encouraged to use more disposable plastic if they think it's being recycled safely. But there's also a little problem, a micro problem that's adding up to one big mess. Every time we wash synthetic fabrics, whether they're made from recycled bottles or brand new materials, super tiny pieces of plastic, called microfibers, wash off and flow down the drain. Up to hundreds of thousands each wash. The older our clothes get, the worse the problem can become. Yikes! These fibers are so tiny, water treatment plants don't catch them all, so they wind up in rivers, lakes, and even the ocean.
So that's just one example of how microplastics can enter our environment. There are countless more. So where are all of these microplastics in our oceans causing so much harm? Well, unfortunately, they're everywhere. Microplastics are the most abundant debris in the ocean by far. They're found at the sea surface, on beaches, in the Arctic ice, and even in deep sea and deep sea sediments. In one study, deep sea scientists collected up to 40 fibers per teacup of water, mostly polyester and acrylic, which would be things associated with plastics like packaging, insulating material, and fishing gear. Microplastics are also found in freshwater, like rivers, lakes, streams, and even in wastewater. Microplastics are so small and light that they are even floating in the air. And microplastics have even been found in things we drink, like tap water, bottled water, and even beer. Models are currently showing that there's somewhere between 15 to 51 trillion microplastic particles floating just at the surface of the ocean. That's just the surface. So let's compare. If we were to take the average of that range, about 35 trillion microplastic particles, that would be 130 times more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. If you were to count one piece per second, it would take you 1,050,000 years. And as you might guess, this is a problem right here in Tampa Bay too. In 2019, the first official study was published about the number of microplastics in Tampa Bay. Bottle samples and plankton tows were done throughout the bay. They also collected and looked at sediment samples too. They found the bottle samples to have up to 7 particles per liter of water, which is consistent with stuff like laundry lint, fishing line, and net pieces. The highest concentrations of microplastics were found in the bottom sediments near industries, treatment plants, and river mouths. The overall result of the study was that there's about 4 microplastic particles per gallon of surface water throughout Tampa Bay, which equates to 4 billion particles in the surface waters of Tampa Bay. And in the sediments, they found about 600 microplastic particles per pound of sediment. Extrapolating that out means there's about 3 trillion particles in the sediments of Tampa Bay. So let's put that number into perspective. You guys can probably tell I like doing this quite a bit. If you were to look at each of those 3 trillion pieces, if they were each represented by individual drops of water, that would be enough water to fill 60 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So why is all this plastic and microplastics in the ocean a problem? Well, to name just a few issues. Since plastic is so lightweight, it travels further and quicker than other forms of marine debris, easily spreading around and dirtying up the globe. This floating plastic could be a great vessel for transporting invasive species, bacteria, viruses, and microbes too. It's a form of pollution, causing the destruction of the marine environment and marine habitats. Plastic causes landfilling and shipping waste that leaches toxins into the environment. Plastic marine debris can cause navigation and safety hazards. It also poses a threat to human health. Swimming in dirty water can lead to illnesses. And plastic marine debris threatens the economy. One example of this is how it can affect tourism, especially in places that rely on travelers to come visit their beautiful beaches. Studies have shown that the more marine debris that washes up on shore, the less money those tourist towns will make, as the debris is unsightly and it keeps visitors away. Also, according to Keep America Beautiful, the cost of cleaning up litter each year in the United States is $11.5 billion. And of course, plastic debris can negatively impact wildlife through entanglement and ingestion. As of 2016, more than 690 species have been documented ingesting or getting entangled in plastic marine debris. Now, recent estimates increase that number to over 800 species. And this includes 80 species of just seabirds. Amazingly, 90% of individual seabirds within those 80 species have been affected. As the animals eat the plastic, it gets stuck in their stomachs as they're unable to digest the material. This means that the animal is wasting energy trying to digest the plastic, which thereby reduces its migratory ability and lowers the animal's reproductive potential. In the end, all of this leads to increased mortality rates and smaller population sizes. Microplastics pose all the same dangers as macroplastics do, but more, including specific dangers to wildlife. These small pieces get ingested just like the big pieces, meaning now that even the smallest organisms in the ocean are experiencing the same negative effects. As of 2017, more than 220 species have been documented with microplastics in their systems. So let's take a closer look at what happens once these microplastics are ingested.
The birds, fish, filter feeders, whales, and crustaceans around it are just going about their daily business, which means they're looking for food. Unfortunately for them, tiny bits of floating plastic look a lot like fish eggs and other enticing bits of food. But once ingested, microplastics have a very different and terrible habit of sticking around. Inside an animal's stomach, they not only damage its health with the cocktail of toxins they carry, but can also lead to starvation. Because although nurdles may be ingested, they're never digested, tricking an animal into feeling like it's continually full and leading to its eventual death. When one organism consumes another, microplastics and their toxins are then passed up through the food chain.
As mentioned, these microplastics are toxic, not only because of the chemicals that make up the plastic, but also because these tiny pieces of plastic attract hydrophobic chemicals that are in the water, which normally like to stick to organic material like lipids or fats. But they'll also stick to plastic too, in concentrations 1,000,000 times greater than in the ocean itself, making plastics a cocktail of contaminants. So these harmful toxins are getting absorbed by the animals that eat them too. And don't forget, we eat these animals that eat the microplastics. Does this mean that we're unknowingly ingesting plastic too? Well, the answer to that question is yes. In a recent scientific study, human fecal samples were tested in countries from all over the world. In that study, 100% of samples came back positive with microplastics in them. Current estimates are that on average, here in the US, each person ingests about a credit card worth of plastic every week. This amount increases, especially for those individuals who eat seafood and shellfish. There are 49 species of commercial fish and shellfish that have been documented eating plastic. We even find it in the sea salt that we eat. So are we being harmed by the chemicals those animals are absorbing through biomagnification, as the video mentioned? Well, biomagnification is the process of ingested chemicals exponentially increasing in concentration within each animal as you move up the food chain. As people are at the top of the food chain, reason suggests that the level of toxins in our systems might be pretty high. But how microplastics affect humans is still a very new study, so we don't have many answers to that question yet. But if the microplastics are negatively affecting animals, it's not a stretch to think that we're being affected too. So what is Keep Pinellas Beautiful doing to help combat the problem of microplastics? Well, we're working to make a difference right here in Pinellas County in Tampa Bay. We've started a microplastics program with the primary mission of spreading microplastic awareness and education throughout the Tampa Bay community and beyond. We're doing this through a number of different methods. Since the science of microplastics are so new, especially here in Tampa Bay, we still need a better idea of what the concentrations of microplastics are in our local waters to better understand the full scope of the problem. As hands-on participation motivates and inspires people to develop a true sense of pride and ownership for their local environment, we are recruiting citizen scientists to help collect, filter, and analyze water samples from around Pinellas County to quantify the microplastics concentrations that are out there in our own community. Let's take a closer look at what this work entails. Follow me right this way. Ready? That's it. The sample is collected.
Okay, so I made it to Cross Bayou. I'm under the bridge. I found the water. I'm going to collect my water sample. Got it. We're going to take this 1 liter sample of water back to the office to analyze it under a microscope and see if there's any plastic in the water. All right, I got my water sample.
Awesome work. So we got to get all the water out, and we're going to do that by using a vacuum filter. We've got this set up that we're going to pour the water in the top, and it goes through this little tiny piece of paper. So I'm going to pour the sample in. You see it's already running through, catching anything in the water that's bigger than 0.45 microns in size. But once this is empty, we'll have all of the contents from in here on that piece of paper. Well, now that we're done filtering it, the next step is here. Now we've got our piece of paper with all of that gunk on it, but now we got to figure out, do we have any microplastics in there? So we're going to use the microscope to take a look and see what we can find.
Okay.
This is all gunk that was collected from the ocean, but it's a variety of organic material, possibly plastic material, we don't know yet. That was in that 1 liter sample, now all on a piece of paper. I'm going to put it under the microscope, and let's see what we can find. Scanning the filter paper here, looking to see what we can find. All this looks like natural organic material, algae or other types of sediments possibly, but oh, wait, we found a little blue fiber here. This might be worth taking a closer look and seeing what this is. This could be natural, it might not. This could be a piece of plastic.
How do we know?
Well, we're going to do something that's called the flame test. So we actually need to pick up this tiny, tiny fiber that we can't even see with our eyes. We have to use the microscope to see it. We have to use a very fine point forceps. Pick it up and put it over an open flame for about 1 second. See how it reacts. If it bubbles and melts, we know it's plastic. If it singes and turns black on the edges, we know it's a natural organic type fiber.
It melted. It's plastic.
You're right, it did melt. That is plastic. So we have found a plastic fiber on our sample here. As you can tell, look at the edges there. You can see how the edges have kind of melted. So that's how we know. So we'll write this one down as a piece of plastic. The first one we found in our sample here. Flame test showed that this one melted too, so yep, that one's plastic. The data that we collect is then being reported to our partner, the Florida Microplastics Awareness Project, which is part of the University of Florida IFAS extension, which is collecting microplastic data from organizations all over the state. And to date, we've collected over 150 samples from all over the county, both saltwater and fresh, and we're starting to get a picture of microplastic concentrations in local waters. To learn more about the Florida Microplastic Awareness Project, you can visit their webpage at www.plasticaware.org. And we are in the beginning stages of creating partnerships with local universities like Eckerd College and the University of South Florida to work together to collect and analyze local water samples and share data amongst each other. And we're also spreading knowledge about microplastics throughout the county. Not only have we made these videos, such as the one you just watched, which are viewed by educators and students throughout the county, we've also created educational flyers that are handed out to site captains at every single cleanup we host or sponsor. We also attend outreach events, spreading the message about the dangers of microplastics. And we'll also be working to set up microplastic analysis labs in local high schools, allowing students the ability to improve their lab and leadership skills while contributing to our ongoing sample collection and research. And this year, we will be working to create an entire microplastics curriculum, along with a rentable kit that educators can use in their classrooms. These materials will include lesson plans, PowerPoint presentations, videos, activity sheets, and worksheets designed to engage students' critical thinking skills when it comes to plastic litter, marine debris, and microplastic pollution. And of course, it will teach the students what can be done to help stop this problem. So what can be done to help? It might seem like it's kind of hopeless, but really it's not. So what is the first and foremost important thing that you can do to help? Well, picture this. You get home at the end of the day and see that your kitchen sink faucet is on and water is spilling all over the counters and the floor of your kitchen. What is the very first thing you're going to do when you see all this? Are you going to grab rags and towels and mops to start wiping up all the floors? Well, no, you're going to turn the faucet off. And that is exactly what needs to be done when it comes to microplastics too. We need to stop the flow of microplastics into the ocean before we can fully clean it up. So the best solution is to prevent plastics from getting into the environment in the first place. When making purchases or deciding what to do with your waste, think about this waste reduction pyramid. Focus your efforts at the top of the pyramid and work your way down. The first step is to rethink. Make a plan for how you'll deal with the waste that you're going to be creating. One of the first and best options then might be simply to refuse to use single-use plastics in the first place. For instance, you can skip using a straw. 500 million straws are used in the United States every day. Also, avoid using products with polyethylene or microbeads. You can read product labels. Look up to see if a product has polyethylene. You can choose natural products instead of synthetics. It can actually be pretty easy to just say no thank you to single-use plastics and not have to deal with them at all. Reduce. If you can't refuse to use something, then source reduction is the next top priority. Reuse. Things like reusable water bottles and plastic shopping bags can be used many times rather than their single-use cousins that are constantly being thrown out. Repurpose and repair. Perhaps the item you have can be fixed rather than just thrown out, or perhaps you can envision using it in a way that it wasn't originally designed for. Maybe a plastic jug could be turned into a birdhouse or bird feeder, for instance. Recycle. Although turning something old into something new is a great option, it isn't always as easy as it seems. Focus on all of the R words above this one first before deciding to recycle something. And lastly, recover and compost. Some waste facilities have the ability to burn waste to turn it into energy to power homes and businesses, but this doesn't exist everywhere. It still produces some waste too. It is definitely worthwhile as well to set up a compost bin in your yard, although plastics should not be put into that bin. Ultimately, the best option and our goal should be to aim to produce zero waste. We can do this by reducing our consumption in the first place, minimizing our waste, and ensuring the products we use are made to be reused, repaired, or recycled back into the marketplace or returned to nature. Even if zero waste can't be achieved, by making small changes here and there, we can slowly work our way towards this goal. And of course, another option is to get involved. As we've discussed, Keep Pinellas Beautiful has a number of programs and events that work to reduce the amounts of plastics in our environment. Join one of our cleanups, or you can create your own. Do one of our Pick Up Pinellas cleanups. Adopt an area to keep it clean of trash. Become a microplastics ambassador. Help us collect and analyze water samples from around the county. You can even sign up for a membership or sponsorship with our organization. There are so many ways you can join us to help get rid of plastics and microplastics in our environment. And we invite you to take our plastic-free pledge. This pledge is composed of 10 easy action items you could do every day, all of which help to make a difference. By completing this pledge, you are announcing to the world that you haven't given up hope and that you want to contribute to making our environment healthy for generations to come. If you are interested in taking the pledge and becoming a microplastic ambassador with Keep Pinellas Beautiful and in any of our other programming, memberships or sponsorships, or even if you just have questions about our organization, check out our website at www.kpbcares.org, or you can reach out to me by email at education@kpbcares.org. Feel free to check out our Facebook or Instagram pages too. And you have the power to make a difference. It's not about making huge changes to how you live your life. It's about making small changes over time to limit your use of single-use plastics. Take the pledge. Teach others what you now know about the dangers of plastic and microplastics. Join a local beach, neighborhood, or park cleanup. Let's make this a better, cleaner, and healthier world for us and for all of our future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devon. Appreciate the presentation quite a bit, though quite frightening as well in many ways.
True.
There are a couple of questions from the audience that that they'd like you to address.
Absolutely.
The first one I can see is, what percentage of plastic that people recycle actually gets recycled, or rather ends up in an incinerator?
I believe it's about 10%. It's a fairly small amount that actually ends up getting recycled. So really, that's why with your basic reduce, reuse, recycle, that's why the recycle actually is the third option, because it shouldn't be your first go-to. The first should always be reduce. You should always be looking to reduce the amount of plastic that you use, single-use plastic that you use and that you throw away, basically. And then reuse. You got to reuse whatever you can. And lastly, recycle.
Excellent. Another question was, is it true that the origin of the majority of plastic in the Pacific Patch is Asia? And do countries in Asia and Southeast Asia have programs to reduce the use of plastics also?
That's a really good question. I don't know the types of programming that is in other countries. At this moment, that would be a really good thing. I'd be very happy to look that up and get back to the person who asked the question. But I believe a majority of the plastic that we're finding out around the world is from, I think there's 10 rivers or so that sort of make up a good majority of what is contributing to all this pollution around the world. And they are in some countries in Asia, I think is sort of where the biggest hot spot is. But there are other countries like the United States, which are also contributing to the problem as well. But yeah, that is a great question about other organizations in other countries, especially in Asia. My inclination would be to say yes, there likely are organizations there that are trying to make changes as well. But just off the top of my head, I'm not sure which ones they might be.
Do any of our members have any more questions for the speaker? Well, I guess that's it. Devon, again, thank you so much for the presentation.
Absolutely.
And we very much appreciate your speaking to us about this subject.
Of course. Thank you all for having us.
Yeah.